Hey beautiful blooms. So when you think of a villainous tavern, what do you think of? We tend to think of dark tones, shadows in the corner, and obscured faces, right? Maybe even dirty floorboards and a chipped beer mug or two. But that's not what Huxian Syndicate wanted for their large goblet house design. Instead, they wanted something that screamed relaxing, luxurious, and temptation. In this video, we're going to explore the design process from floor plan to completion, and I'll provide some build guides for the glitch-heavy aspects of the build. So, let's go. The floor plan for this design was fairly straightforward. It makes use of two floors, the ground and upper floors, while cutting off the basement. Since Huxian Syndicate runs an RP venue, we wanted to keep the ground floor relatively open and easy to navigate. Yeah, we also wanted this space to make a statement from the moment you enter, which is why I closed in the entrance a bit to create a tunneling effect, which draws the eye to the central lobby and up towards the ceiling. All of this was achieved by using several tricks, so we'll start with the entrance itself. The dramatic front door was created with only 2 item slots, an imitation stained crystal pane ornament, and a cracked arched window. The stained glass was placed using the storage placement glitch so that it could produce light rays throughout the day like you see here. I just love all the colors that the stained windows produces. In contrast, the cracked arched window is placed backwards with the help of a wooden beam during construction so that you can control how far it sinks into the door. Now as for the frame itself, it's just an oasis arched door. It comes with one of the default goblet housing skins, but otherwise it's a very cheap low-level craft. And it doesn't use an item slot, so that's even better. As for the lobby itself, there really weren't many glitches required to set it up. One of the ones I did choose to implement were floating oasis half partitions up towards the ceiling below the upstairs railing. This was done to help draw the eye up in a subtle way, while also adding a touch of architectural detail. You might also notice that the bar counters are made of verdant shelf partitions, but if you've used this item before, then you know that you can't actually dye the walls on that item. They stay white and you dye the countertops instead, which can be frustrating if you opt to paint your walls like I did here. So I find that if you have the slots in the room to do so, it's worth floating white rectangle partitions up to cover that white space because you can dye those. And I find their color shading to be pretty similar to the marble partition family, which I use throughout the ground floor. Speaking of dyeing the walls, you're probably watching this and wondering, why is a villainous layer so colorful? Well, the key theme the free company gave me for this design was an oasis in the desert. The way Huxian Syndicate works as a villainous free company is they promise to grant you your heart's desire, but such promises come with a price. Typically, your labor and loyalty, and character only, of course. And so they really wanted to create an inviting atmosphere that could lull characters mid-RP into a false sense of security. Thus, we stuck to warm lighting, bone white dye for the walls to pair with all the sandstone architecture, and adamantoise green for all the drapery, which pairs well with the ivy curtains and other greeneries strewn throughout the space. Now, returning to the bar, we also wanted the bar to have a standout piece since most patrons tend to crowd around there first. So, like most high-end bars, I chose to deck out the liquor shelves and enshroud them in a lavish glass casing. This was done with tier 4 aquarium, 2 back bar shelves, 2 ivy pillars, and the top of an oasis partition. Both the partition and the pillars were floated up from the basement below to get these unique heights. As for the geometric pattern on top, it's made of 3 imitation long windows. There's also these really simple lion fountains that sits between the 2 liquor cabinets in the bar. And they're also strewn about through the rest of the build. If you're wanting a touch of something opulent but don't want to use a ton of item slots, then these are perfect for you because they only require 2 slots. The base is an oasis bathtub with the royal lion up top. That's it. The lion itself is actually a tabletop item too, so with the help of something like a Riviera bookshelf, it's real easy to place. Now, if you want to have water gushing out of the lion's mouth like you can see here, then you can also float an oasis fountain, which is a wall-mounted item, and hide it within the lion's head and chest. Thankfully, they're big enough that you can actually do this relatively easily. The final piece on the ground floor that requires a little bit of glitching is the Guestbook area. Now, this space is as dramatic as it is because it was originally a bonus counter to turn in items during RP. However, it wasn't really a hit with patrons and will more than likely be replaced in a future remodel because hopefully hopefully, Dawn Trail will give us that item slot increase that Yoshi promised. Come on, Yoshi, please. That being said, if you like how this looks and want to build something similar for yourself, then it's easy. The frame is a marble alcove bed dyed bone white with swag valances for the drapery in adamantoise green like the rest of the ground floor. The skybox is a moonlit phasmoscape and the flowers are 2 old rose planters. Finally, the bottom is a golden saucer counter. Try saying that 3 times fast, you have no idea how much I kept screwing that up in takes. As for the countertop that actually houses the guestbook, it's just a curved marble partition floated from the basement. Now you can't just place tabletop items on the marble top of the partition. You do have to use things like the wooden beams or Riviera shelf to place them where you like. So make sure you have what you want on that fake counter before you fill in the rest of the build. And this is mainly because it doesn't have tabletop physics for whatever reason. It sucks, but you do what you gotta do if you want something custom like this. Now, while the lion's share of the items went to the construction of the ground floor, the FC still wanted the upper floor to look good and to match, and not just for aesthetic reasons either. The second floor serves as a storytelling purpose for the venue. Huxian Syndicate hosts a quest hub venue once a month for villainous and morally gray characters. As patrons complete quests the FC's players have created, they'll earn reputation with the Syndicate and eventually gain access to the upper floors, where they'll also qualify for exclusive quests not available to the public. So not only did this space need to match thematically with less slots, but it needed to exude an air of mystery, of exclusivity and privacy. So to achieve that, I opted to completely close off the east wing, since for whatever reason in large houses, that side of the upper floor has a window counter built into it by default. I shoved a couple of bookshelves there in exchange to make it look like a record-keeping space. I also wanted to continue that oasis aesthetic, which meant plants. Lots and lots and lots of plants. I swear there were over 40 ivy curtains in this gosh dang build by the time I was done, but they were perfect for what I wanted. And in the corridors, I floated them up towards the ceiling so it looked like they were trailing down from ceiling rafters, which the little wooden piece on that item works perfectly for that kind of look. I also floated more white rectangular partitions in between oasis pillars to create some walls and let more ivy curtains trail down from to create a pseudo arch effect when you walk by. Which, let me tell you, placing these oasis pillars was a pain in the butt. To get this effect, you have to use the storage placement glitch and, very carefully, line them up along the railing. That being said, I think the effect was absolutely worth the trouble. Making use of the arbor interior wall helped add depth to all the greenery as well. For the second tier of quests, Huxian Syndicate wanted a more secluded spot to hand them out, since it's meant to be this kind of secret club sort of thing that you earn access to, and for that I opted to make use of the southern strip corridor. You know, that space by that fake balcony door that Square Enix still hasn't let us do anything with in large houses? Please, come on, just give us something here, would ya? I put it there because it's surprisingly wide, and there's something about building for venues that you don't necessarily have to think about when building for a personal home, and that is, say, an emote chat. In FF14, at least on the Crystal Data Center, it's very common for RP venues to encourage open role-playing and do so through these 2 chat logs. However, something to keep in mind is there's an actual physical limit to how far away you can stand from another player before you can no longer view whatever they type into the chat box. So if you build your venue with features that are outside of this distance, then what happens is guests feel like they're isolated and lonely and outside of the main action. And this distance works vertically as well as horizontally. Thankfully, this little strip in the south corridor, you can actually still see all of the RP that's taking place in the ground floor where we have the lobby, which means players can conduct their exclusive meetings without missing a beat of the action below. It's also perfectly positioned so that you get a sneak peek of the final area through the southwest doorway, which leads us to the boss's office. The ultimate goal of rising through the ranks of this RP venue is to receive offers directly from the FC's leader in this very office. And for that reason, I knew it needed to leave an impression despite having a fraction of the item slots to work with. So to accomplish this, I set up a secluded meeting area against a beautifully eerie nighttime window scene, which the window is very easy to build. Once again, the skybox is a move-and-land phasmoscape, only this time it's framed by an Arbol March partition dyed bone white instead of the marble bed that you saw in the ground floor. The curtains are a simple curtain and swag valance dyed turquoise green this time to accommodate for the more direct lighting. Adamantoids wouldn't have worked right with all the lights so close. The bottom is a royal plotting table with 2 wall planters floated above it, just enough for the vines to flow over the side. Finally, a potted dragon plant helps add some depth. You don't have to worry about adding collision with this build because the Phasmoscape provides it, and I love them for that reason. As for the rest of the office, it's pretty simple. More marble and marble arch partitions make up the majority of the framework, like they did on the ground floor. Only here, the oasis half partitions make a return to add a touch more detail to the space. Now, slight spoilers for Shadowbringers if you haven't finished the expansion yet, but the wall sconces are Amaro lamps. More old rose planters add a pop of complementary color, while an oasis fountain and a blank oasis partition sporting a black marble wall creates a focal point and adds some great aquatic soundscapes to the room. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed I used this particular idea all over the ground floor as well. Everything else about the build can be done with minimal to no glitching, so feel free to take inspiration from what you've seen today and adapt it to your own designs. 400 item slots really isn't much when it comes to large houses, so when building in them, you kind of have to decide how much space you're willing to cover. That being said, the limitation is great for forcing me to reserve more glitch-heavy ideas for dedicated focal points. And of course, a huge shout out to Huxian Syndicate for letting me build their venue for them. This is actually my 3rd design for the free company, so it means the world that they've trusted in me for this long, and I look forward to hopefully remodeling again when Dawn Trail comes out. If you're curious about the previous 2 iterations, I'll leave a link to my housing snap entries in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw or have any further questions, please let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of my designs and guides in the future, please be sure to subscribe too. And before you go, if you're like me and you thought Halloween got shafted for Christmas this year and you're still missing those playfully creepy vibes, then I've also got a video up on the screen that will take you to a gothic-ish guardian build I did for a friend that you can vibe with. Until next time, see you then!